we have even newer developments in the Seth Rich case. Now, before we get too far into this video, I wanted to mention one very specific thing. So, there has been a heavy discouragement about talking about the Seth Rich case on Reddit. You will get banned from all of the default subs if you even mention his name. Twitter users are being suspended and, in some cases, banned. And the mainstream media, namely Sean Hannity, is facing a ridiculous amount of backlash just from trying to talk about this case. It's strange to me. Even if there isn't anything nefarious behind the death of Seth Rich, there should be no reason why we can't at least investigate. What we're told is we're politicizing the man's death, yet when there was a bombing where 22 children were killed in a suicide bombing, people were quick to politicize it for women and children, right? Oh, this is clearly sexism. This is just a great example of the sexism we face in our society. So that's okay to do. All the mainstream outlets, not all of them, but a lot of them, like Salon, Slate, a lot of the bottom-feeding ones, they were talking heavily about how this is about feminism and the things that women face in this world. Isn't that a little bit more disgusting? Especially considering that it was a radical religious asshole that caused this. So surely this isn't about an attack on women. This is an attack on culture that we're referring to. But I don't want to get too far into that, but I wanted to point out the hypocrisy, this double standard. They really don't want us talking about this. So that's why I keep talking about it. They can kiss my fucking ass. This first image was taken from a WND article. So we'll go ahead and read through it real quick. The third time I talked to Mr. Rich, Seth's father, he said, "Ed, there is a guy named Berkman who keeps saying he represents us. I'm going to give you his phone number. Please tell him to stop doing that. We have a man who was assigned to us by the DNC," Patowski explained to WND. According to Patowski, Joe Rich added, "We were assigned a guy named Brad Bauman. I don't know why we were assigned him. I have no idea why I need somebody to speak for me, but please tell Mr. Berkman, because he is not listening to me, to go away and stop acting like he speaks for us." Joe Rich's exact words were, "The DNC assigned Bauman to us," Patowski said. Patowski said he's never spoken to Berkman, but all I know is that Mr. Rich does not like him, that he wouldn't listen and kept making up stuff. How many people do you know who have died mysteriously? Not as many as the Clintons. Check out WND's explosive report, Clinton Death List, 33 spine-tingling cases. In an interview with WND on May 16th, Bauman explained that he was put in touch with Rich's family by two of Rich's friends, both of whom worked for the DNC, and that the family requested help because they had more media requests than they could handle. There is also a Daily Mail article that I talked about in a previous video regarding this case, to which the family directly asked the DC department in a statement to release any and all information to the public regarding this case. So now that we were able to try to use the Seth Rich family and their grievances to shame anyone looking into this case as a way to stop looking at all, now that they're asking for the evidence, surely we can shame the people who are trying to hide it, right? Or are we just going to ignore the wishes of the family at this point? And just imagine in a different situation where the family came forward and asked the police to stop looking into the murder of their son. Can you imagine in a different scenario, in a logical extreme, how that might not be a good idea? One thing to keep in mind, however, in regards to double standards, is that people who read Saul Alinsky and implement his tactics will not follow their own code of ethics because the ends justify the means. One of his, I think, one of the 13 rules of Saul Alinsky is to not hold yourself to your own standards. Essentially, to allow yourself to do anything necessary to win. And by expecting your enemy to also hold themselves to a higher moral standard, that gives you a bit of an advantage. Now we have this official document here, which doesn't have a whole lot of information, but has a few interesting snidbits, so we'll just read through the whole thing. On March 9th, 2016, Department of Justice Oversight personnel conducting a minimization review at the FBI's blank learned that the FBI had disclosed raw FISA information, including but not limited to Section 702 acquired information to a blank. Compliance report at 92. Redacted and is largely staffed by private contractors. certain redacted contractors had access to raw FISA information on FBI storage systems redacted ID. I think this is referring to the SEIU. The apparent purpose for the FBI's granting such access was to receive analytical assistance from redacted. Nonetheless, the contractors had access to raw FISA information that went well beyond what was necessary to respond to the FBI's request. The FBI discontinued the above-described access to raw FISA information as of April 18, 2016. So they had access for less than a few weeks. The contractors in question received training on the FBI minimization procedures, stored the raw information only on FBI systems, and did not disseminate it further. ID at 93. Nonetheless, the above-described practices violated the governing minimization procedures. Section 3A of the FBI's minimization procedures, as then in effect and now proposed, provides the FBI must retain all FISA-acquired information under appropriately secure conditions that limit access to such information only to authorized users in accordance with these and other applicable FBI procedures. These retention procedures apply to FISA-acquired information retained in any form. The FBI may disseminate Section 702 acquired information only in accordance with Section 5 of these procedures. FBI Minimization Procedures, Section 3C1. Under Section VD of these procedures, personnel working for another federal agency, such as redacted, may receive raw information acquired under Section 702 in order to provide technical or linguistic assistance to the FBI, but only if certain restrictions are followed. These restrictions were not in place with regard to the redacted contractors. I still think that's either SEIU or DNC. Their access was not limited to raw information for which the FBI sought assistance, and access continued even after they had completed work in response to an FBI request. Compliance report at 93. At the October 4th, 2016 hearing, the government represented that it was investigating whether there had been similar cases in which the FBI improperly afforded non-FBI personnel access to raw FISA-acquired information on FBI systems. October 4th, 2016. Transcript at 64. So it is odd. They were sharing secured information. In a separate violation of its minimization procedures, the FBI delivered raw Section 702 acquired information to a redacted contractor called Redacted. Compliance report at 131. The information in question pertains to redacted accounts tasked under Section 702. Redacted, as a federal agency, could receive a raw Section 702 acquired information in order to provide technical assistance to the FBI, subject to the requirements of Section VD of the FBI minimization procedures. FBI is authorized to disclose FISA-acquired information to assisting federal agencies for further processing and analysis, subject to specified restrictions. However, the agency in question is not a federal agency, and the personnel involved who work with the information were not directly supervised by or otherwise under the direction and control of Redacted. For those reasons, the government concluded that the FBI had given the information to the private entity, blank, not to an assisting federal agency. The government has not explained why giving, blank, personal access to the raw information during installation of the tool would not involve a separate violation of the FBI minimization procedures. Accordingly, the court is ordering the government to provide additional information regarding the second grant of access to raw Section 702 information. And I'm going to skip this little chunk here because it's just jargon. In contrast, the above-described blank contractors worked in a federal facility under the supervision of Redacted. Compliance report at 93. It appears that the government views the above-described disclosures of information to the blank contractors as disclosures to a federal agency rather than to a private entity or private individuals. In any event, the government acknowledges that the disclosures were improper for other reasons, so the court need not reach this question. And as I said before, it's very likely that this could be the SEIU, as you can see that their acronym fits perfectly in the redacted space. And I just realized this might be a bit of a long video because we still have a lot more to look into. All there is from this last evidence was that the FBI was sharing its information with a third party. I think there's a lot of suspicion behind that if there wasn't already enough suspicion for this whole case. Proof that DNC manufactured the Russian controversy in June 2016. Democrats manufactured the Russian interference story as a disinformation campaign all the way back in June 2016. And this post will prove this beyond reasonable doubt with evidence. Not just that, but there is great circumstantial evidence of illegal activity going all the way up to the Obama administration and provides new motive for how and why Seth Rich was murdered. The evidence is presented in this post. Timeline. Understanding the order in which the events happened will be important to understand why it was the DNC and only the DNC who could have manufactured the Russian campaign. June 14, 2016. The DNC releases a statement stating that they have been hacked, their source being Washington Post. The next day, June 15th, CrowdStrike, a cybersecurity firm, releases reports suggesting that the DNC was hacked by Russians. And that's CrowdStrike. Then, the same day, Guccifer 2.0 publishes first DNC email documents and claims he has sent them to WikiLeaks. Guccifer insists that he is not Russian. June 16th, the following day, Vice publishes article titled Guccifer 2.0 is likely a Russian government attempt to cover up its own hack. Other media outlets follow suit, calling Guccifer a Russian government job. And July 22nd, 2016, WikiLeaks releases the DNC email documents. And then a few days later, July 27th, Trump makes infamous, Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. Joke that starts allegations of Russian collusion. Politico reported that. Big surprise. So in bullet form, DNC announces that they've been hacked. The day after, a hacker calling himself Guccifer 2.0 claims to have taken credit for the hack and announces that he will be giving his documents to WikiLeaks. Guccifer 2.0 vehemently denies being Russian, a facade he keeps up throughout his activity. Bolstered by CrowdStrike's report and the metadata in Guccifer 2.0 documents, media outlets immediately start screaming that Guccifer 2.0 must be of Russian agents. And finally, WikiLeaks releases the DNC documents a month after Guccifer 2.0 did. This post unmasks Guccifer 2.0's identity as none other than the DNC itself. What did Guccifer 2.0 do? Guccifer 2.0 hosted a WordPress site where the DNC documents could be publicly downloaded. June 15th was the date of the first Guccifer 2.0 leak. Further leaks would continue thereafter. I focus only on the first leak as they contain the metadata for which is essential in proving that it was a DNC operation. What were in the leaked Guccifer documents? Guccifer 2.0 leaked a total of 10 Office documents from the DNC in the first batch. Many more would come, but none contain the same mistakes as the one I shall detail. All Microsoft Office documents have metadata entries which contain attributes about the document itself, such as the user that created them, the user that modified them, and so on. The metadata is usually invisible to viewers but can be viewed with a raw text editor like Notepad or on Office Vim. It would be unusual for a leaker to modify the metadata, but Guccifer 2.0 did, claiming that it was his watermark. In Office, the metadata includes the owner of the Office application who created the file and the owner of the Office application who modified the file. I present a list of the document names having metadata values for original author and modified author. Document number 1, original author, Warren Flood. And then the modified author was the watermark for Guccifer 2.0. Documents 1 through 3 have Warren Flood as the original author. The fourth doctor, a person named Blake. And the fifth, someone referred to as JBS 836. Now, this name that is for the Guccifer 2.0 watermark is Felix, and I don't know how to pronounce that last name, in the English alphabet, who was an early Soviet statesman who died in 1926. So what? Warren Flood, Blake, and JBS 836 were the original authors? Short answer? No. Non-technical answer. For one thing, we can cross-reference the actual authors from the WikiLeaks dump. 1.doc is the verified WikiLeaks release as the attachment which can be downloaded from here, which has the original author of Lauren Dillon. So wait, who is Warren Flood et al.? Each of these documents has a creation date of June 15th and were modified by the Russian watermark a few minutes later. In Office 2007 format specification, there is a certain style sheet template which dictates overall formatting for the document. In 3 of the documents by Warren Flood, we find the identical metadata. The above line appears across all 3 of Warren Flood's documents. This series of numbers and letters is a unique identifier that is author associative. The fact that it does not appear in other documents indicates it's associated with Warren Flood and not the Russian watermark. Why is this important? Well, the portion of the numbers and letters is a setting saying that Russian language should be used as a default language for the document. Had the Russian watermark been setting the watermark, it would be the same across all documents, but instead, distinct watermarks were created for each document creator, suggesting inconsistent application or 3 different creators applying their own watermark. In other words, document creators set the document properties to use Russian language and created 3 distinct so-called watermarks, in doing so, not said Russian watermark. Also, cross-reference to WikiLeaks shows that Warren Flood did not author any of these documents, and given that the timestamps are all on June 15th, this is a sequence of events. Warren Flood opens a DNC document, copies it, and pastes it as a new document to his computer. Warren Flood sets the theme language to Russian in some way. This process is different for all authors. Warren Flood modifies the document's author to Russian watermark. The modified document is then uploaded to the Guccifer website and publicly published a short time thereafter. Who is Warren Flood? Warren Flood is a high-ranking technology official for Democratic operatives, having worked for Obama for America, DNC, and Joe Biden. It is a unique name. His name does not appear in any of the WikiLeaks emails, meaning that he appears to be a third party as far as the DNC email leaks are concerned. Over than his professional internet profile, he is a social media ghost, never having made any tweets nor any evidence of real social media activity. The pertinent point is this: the metadata forensic proof is irrefutable that Warren Flood or someone who owned a copy of Word registered to Warren Flood shoehorned in obvious Russian fingerprints all over the documents. I know I said fingerprints. I've already done like 5 takes. I don't want to do it again. Guccifer 2.0 is none other than a botched DNC creation to create a false flag for Russia. Impact of Guccifer 2.0 being a DNC creation. The Russian influence the U.S. election campaign all started from the DNC leak. Allegations of Russian influence was built on a completely fabricated foundation of lies. Big surprise there. In hindsight, we know now that the Obama administration unmasking of U.S. campaign officials on the pretext of Russian interference started in June 2016, same date as when Guccifer 2.0 began. The implications that the unmasking all was predicted on a DNC psyops is staggering. Who cares why the DNC did it? Because it proves that Russian interference started as a total DNC fabrication that persists today. The whole Russian campaign started before Trump made his infamous joke about Russians getting Hillary's emails. Illegal unmasking of Trump campaign officials over Russian interference began in June 2016. Was this predicted on Russian interference with the DNC hacks? If so, this means that the leaks not only implicate DNC and plague President Trump himself, but also implicates the Obama administration officials and all involved intelligence agencies. Why did DNC leak their own documents? It's right in the Guccifer 2.0's blog. Pertinent quote: "The main part of the papers, thousands of files and emails I gave to WikiLeaks. They will publish them soon. The DNC knew that they were having their documents leaked to WikiLeaks and wanted to make sure a Russian hacker took credit for these leaks." How did the DNC know WikiLeaks was going to release the DNC emails? Great question. It's hard to imagine them knowing without assistance from intelligence agencies and indeed unmasking of campaign officials starting in June 2016. This is, of course, highly illegal and would mean that the Russian disinformation campaign wasn't just a DNC operation, but that it was also created from collusion with the Obama administration using highly illegal means, including violations of the Fourth Amendment. Since Guccifer 2.0 was a botched operation, that might make the continued existence of the real leaker who might draw scrutiny that much more precarious. What about the CrowdStrikes report? The metadata I described above can be independently verified by a non-technical person with access to any text editor like VIM. It does not require special forensic analysis to identify. There are only 2 explanations: staggering incompetence or DNC collusion. I cannot say if CrowdStrike is incompetent, but I can say that their co-founder and CTO, Dmitry Alperovich, is a senior fellow with the Atlantic Council, a think tank whose policies could be termed as anti-protectionist. Who has leaked the DNC emails to DNC? In short, all circumstantial evidence points to Seth Rich. Seth Rich was killed on July 10th after the Guccifer drops and before the WikiLeaks release. WikiLeaks also offered a $20,000 reward for information on Seth Rich's death. Craig Murray, a British national connected with WikiLeaks, claims a disgruntled Democrat insider was the leaker and he personally flew overseas to make the drop. So I wonder if there is a paper trail of Seth Rich flying overseas right around this time. Was Seth Rich murdered by the DNC? We're getting into speculative territory here. The circumstances of his death are suspicious. There have never been a homicide prior or after in his area. The assailants did not steal any of his valuables. Conspiracy theorists assume Seth Rich was murdered by the DNC to set an example. Personally, I think that as long as Seth Rich existed, he could have spoken up as the leaker at any moment and drawn scrutiny to Guccifer 2.0 being a DNC operation. The unmasking of Trump and related officials started in June 2016 using the DNC hacks as a pretext. Seth Rich's continued existence could have led to the fall of the White House and intelligence agencies. Is that motive enough for a political hit? You tell me. News sources say that the documents contain DNC metadata is disproven. In addition to hosting them on official WordPress website, DNC documents were sent directly by Guccifer 2.0 to media outlets such as The Hill, despite Guccifer 2.0 himself claiming hatred of these very same media outlets, accusing him of being Russian. What Guccifer 2.0 sent was not always the same as was on the official Guccifer 2.0 website. My speculation is that Guccifer 2.0 revised the documents to remove the metadata and sent those corrected documents to the media outlets. He could not do the same on his WordPress site without drawing intense scrutiny, so the botched documents remained. Bottom line, it is impeachable that watermarked Russian metadata in Guccifer's first document drop are associated with a DNC tech worker named Warren Flood, who otherwise had nothing to do with the DNC emails. Any media outlet reporting otherwise are probably either working from their own corrected copy from Guccifer or spinning hard, or both. And then I found this little snippet of an article. I'm not sure what the original source was, but it was on Twitter, and I'm going to go ahead and trust, but hopefully verify at some point. So on July 22nd, 2016, there was an article saying, FBI offers up to $10,000 reward for recovering stolen weapons. And it says here that on Sunday, July 10th, 2016, the day that Seth Rich was murdered, particularly 2 hours before he was murdered, between midnight and 2 a.m., unknown subjects burglarized an FBI special agent's vehicle and removed a secured gun lockbox which contained weapons and other equipment. The vehicle was parked in the H Street corridor near H and 7th Streets, northeast. So if they used FBI weapons in this assassination, can you imagine how far the FBI would have to go to cover their own tracks, especially if they are actively involved? Perhaps this is why this case has been not getting investigated, according to Seth Rich's parents, by the way. Seth Rich's parents said they felt like they weren't being talked to by the police department. When they were reached out by somebody else instead of Brad Bauman, someone directly talked to them, and they said, yeah, we haven't heard fucking anything at all. People keep speaking up in our name, but we haven't heard anything. It's like they're not investigating. I'm paraphrasing. It was something along those lines. If you're here still, congratulations. I think this might be one of my longest videos that I've done. And it was kind of boring, a lot of jargon and just reading stuff that's kind of hard to interpret. But the way I see it, this is the conclusion I've come to from everything we've just read, supposing that it is 100% genuine. It is likely that Seth Rich wasn't assassinated to make an example out of him, but to tie up a loose end. That the DNC leaked their own documents as a form of damage control. They intentionally made it look like Russia hacked them, when in fact they hacked themselves, or rather somebody in their group had hacked them. This whole thing just keeps getting crazier. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to do this video, and now that I'm looking at like 25-minute long video on this, I kind of wish I didn't start, honestly, but down the rabbit hole we go. I will continue to pump out more information regarding this, because I find it absolutely disgusting how there have been people saying we are not allowed to look into this because the family said we shouldn't. When in fact we have evidence that the family says we should look into this. Please keep looking into this. The person saying we should stop looking into this is the person who was appointed to the Seth Rich family, Brad Bauman, and he's speaking on their behalf. Now they're coming out, speaking to Daily Mail and a few other places saying, no, we didn't choose this guy. He was assigned to us and he spoke on our behalf. I love this idea that looking into a conspiracy theory is somehow disrespectful to the family. What about the JFK assassination? Do you think people aren't allowed to look into that because, or even for the sake of entertainment, not even for the sake of actually investigating? All of us are actually trying to find justice for Seth Rich. A lot of us are actually trying to uncover the truth. With JFK, it's all fun and games, and we're just kind of, I don't know, maybe we'll find out that it was the driver of the limo that turned around and shot him. He was one of the shooters anyway. Maybe we will find that's the case. But how come it's okay for us to talk about that? How come it's okay for us to talk about like Area 51 and aliens, but we can't talk about a very, very suspicious murder? One that could possibly be a political assassination. And we're not allowed to look into it because it's sad for somebody? Fuck that. That is some horse shit, and I am pretty sure most people can see through it. But if you go on to Reddit or Twitter, and probably pretty soon YouTube, if you even mention it, you're seen as some sort of not only moronic, but also demonic. People are so quick to virtue signal about how much they care for the fucking dead that they treat the living like shit, so they can virtue signal about the dead. What comes to mind is Thunderfoot and the Skeptic Feminist murder. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Let me know if you guys come up with any developments, anything new that I can look into, try to validate for myself, verify it, make sure it's all hunky-dory. But man, this video, I actually spent the last 3 hours recording this video. So I hope you guys like it. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of something at the end of this video as a thank you to anyone who's lasted this long. So remember, folks, Techno Viking does not dance to the music. The music dances to Techno Viking.